everyone, my name is Yakshipriya and welcome to my channel. So today's video I'm going to be creating this piece for Halloween 2022, and you can see this is a sketch that I initially did in my sketchbook, and then I traced it out on some tracing paper, and now I'm just going to transfer it to my drawing paper with some transfer paper. So you can see I'm just positioning the image on my drawing paper, and then I just got that with some masking not masking, with some washi tape stuck down, and then now I'm using these little tools just to create or to basically transfer the image with some graphite transfer paper onto my final paper. So you can see all the supplies I'm using will be listed in the description box below. Now I am going to be using acrylics for this piece, and I am using a paper that's a mixed media paper that can take acrylic paints. And once I have that entire image copied to my drawing paper, now I'm just copying the outlines of everything. I'm not going into too much detail with the lines. I am going to paint over with the paints and add the details with the paints. It's just for the placement of everything. So now I'm going in with different colors from blue going into purples. I'm not paying too much attention to the strokes of my brush strokes. They are going to get covered up with multiple layers, as well as the trees that are going to come on top of it. But you can see with paper, you need to bear in mind that this is not like canvas where you can move the pigment or the paint around. It is going to absorb into the paper. So this is meant for acrylics, and you can use it for acrylics, but just bear that in mind when you are painting on a mixed media paper for acrylics. So now you can see I'm starting to add another layer of color, and as I'm adding layers of color, you can see it's sort of blending out and it's not showing a lot of the strokes, although I'm not worried if it shows too much of the strokes, because this is more of an illustrative piece, and I wanted to do something for Halloween. I do a painting every year for Halloween, so I wanted to do one this year, and this is the idea that came to me, and I decided to put it onto paper. So you can see I painted a base layer of purple for the raven, and then I also put in the moon, which I am going to add more detail to later. Now I am using a filbert brush just to add some details for the raven, and the strokes that I'm adding on the paper is actually helping me to create the look or the texture of the feathers and the shapes of the feathers, and create that little bit of dimension with the different feathers. And that's something that I really like about working with the acrylics on a paper. But now I'm just going in and working on the little wooden sign that the raven is sitting on top of, and I'm just adding the base layer of some brown. Now I am going to come in later and add more details to this, but at the moment I'm just adding the base color. So once that's dry, then I move on to adding a bit more details onto the raven. So you can see I'm starting to darken the feathers and also the beak, and add in the eye. I am going to add the details or lighter areas and highlights as I go on. But for now, that's the next layer. And now I'm moving on to the background, just adding a little wash of color over the mansion in the background. Or the little haunted mansion in the background, and then I'm now starting to add the base layer for the tree that's in more of the foreground. I normally work from the background moving forward, but in this case I wanted to just have the placement of the tree so that I know where the graveyard is going to be in the background. I'll be able to place that in the correct position. So I'm also adding all the trees now. Now I'm working on the background again. And then I'm just adding all the base layers for the entire illustration. So even the pathway to the mansion, I'm just adding that base layer, and then now I'm starting to refine some of those details on the texture of the wood for the sign that the raven is sitting on. And I'm also moving back and forth. You'll see I move from one area to the other area, because while the one area is drying, I move over to the next area. And that's just the way I like working. I don't complete one thing completely. I do whichever section I move around to as I'm working. So you can see now I'm starting to add the base layer for all the tombstones in the graveyard, and I wanted this to be more of an illustrative style, like maybe a book cover for maybe a haunted or a scary book or something like that, scary novel or something. So I was looking for something more of an illustrative look like that, and I was actually happy with the final results of how it turned out. But you can see now I started adding the details of the raven. I add the highlights of in the eye and the beak as well, and then I also went over the mansion again with another layer, and then I started refining all the clouds in the sky, just adding a bit more shadow areas, as well as adding some of those lighter areas for where the light of the moon is on the clouds. And then I moved into the front again, and I'm adding the pumpkin. Now the pumpkin, I'm just putting a base layer of orange. Now I didn't want it to be too bright orange, so you can see I'm going to tone it down a lot as I'm adding the layers. So now I'm just adding a base layer for the ground around, as well as the graveyard ground. I'm adding a bit of a bluish gray color to the graveyard, the entire graveyard. I'm even going over the tombstones as well. I will refine those and add more details and bring them out again. That's just to create that depth, because now I'm using a lighter gray just to really map out all of them, and then going darker as I'm going into the deep into the background, because the further the tombstones are, the less detail they're going to have and the more in shadow they're going to be. So they'll be darker in the background. And then I'm just adding a little bit of details to some of the tombstones. I was going to write something on the one in front, but then I decided against it because it is in the distance. You're not going to be able to see what's written on it. So now I'm going on to the pumpkin. As I said, I'm adding a lot of more details to the pumpkin, adding a bit more shadow areas so you can see those patterns on the pumpkin, as well as adding the cutout eyes, nose and mouth as well. And then I'm just refining that tree that's growing beside the haunted mansion. It gives it a sort of an eerie look. And then I'm adding now some details to the mansion where the moonlight is hitting the mansion, and you're seeing that light areas casting shadows in certain areas and light reflecting on the roof and certain parts of the building, on the building of the mansion. And that's just, I'm not creating too much of detail on the mansion. I just want to create the impression of a dark mansion in the background, or down this long path there's a creepy mansion, no lights on, it's just dark and eerie looking, and it's in the background, so it's not going to have too much of detail because it's quite far in the background. The raven is in the foreground beside this tree, which is also starting to move into the background, and that's where the details are going to be on things in the foreground. So that's why the raven has got a lot of details for the highlights and the dark shadow areas of its feathers. And then now I'm just painting in all the ground area as well as the tree, adding a bit of color to the tree, not too much because I want to keep it more of a silhouette look. And then I am just adding a bit more color to the ground around the sign, and then also adding a bit of a glowing, murky sort of a look, like a misty look to the graveyard. So it looks sort of foggy, and it has this glow in it which looks eerie on its own as well. So I'm just adding that look to it, and then obviously just adding now some little bit of grass in the foreground and keeping that bluish purplish glow because of the look of this piece. It has this purple and bluish look to it, so I'm adding that to these basically all the grass that I'm drawing, or painting in. I'm adding that glowishness to it. Even the purple, I'm creating a little bit of a cast bluish purple glow on the pathway, and basically just refining all those little details of the pumpkin. And then I'm also adding some details to the little sign, as well as painting in some of the words, like cemetery is pointing towards the back, and then you have the mansion down the pathway to the right, and then you have downtown towards the left. Now that is written with some chalk pencil, and then I use the acrylic over. So now I'm just adding a bit more shadow to the pathway closer to the mansion, and then just lightening it up in the foreground. And there we have the final piece. I just signed my name at the bottom of the piece, and there is my Halloween piece for 2022. So now I'm just removing the washi tape because I want to see that crisp edge. It's very satisfying to remove the washi tape with the painting because you have this crisp edges, and that's really very satisfying to watch. Although that piece of the washi tape just ripped there, but I am going to pull it out and you will see the full of clean edges once I'm done. And there's my completed piece for Halloween 2022. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one. Bye.